Hey, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Ah, sweet. Okay, so you know how I've never played an instrument? Well, guess what? I wrote you a sweet banger of a track, and I worked real hard on it. So just enjoy it.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Game Theory. Back at it again with the totally normal game theories about Doki Doki Literature Club. So, last time we covered some of the interesting psychological manipulation DDLC pushes onto the player. Now, to be fair, that subject was pretty interesting. I really wanted to talk about it, but that theory wasn't exactly crazy, at least not compared to some of the other theories I've made. No, I think it's about time to get much deeper. So deep, in fact, that this theory might just be the longest and most complex theory I've ever worked on. To be fair, part of this theory has been around for a while. People on Reddit had discovered this a long time ago, and our buddy MatPat even covered it. And I mean, in any other case, I wouldn't cover this now. Why cover something that everyone else already knows? Well, here's the thing. MatPat's videos, the other theories on Reddit, those are just the beginning, the mere foundation for a much bigger theory. Oh yeah, I'm serious. Not only can I prove that Doki Doki Literature Club is deeply connected with a yet-to-be-released game by the creator of DDLC, Dan Salvato, but I'm going much further than that. In fact, I'm going to reveal the much bigger picture, not only for DDLC and the unreleased game, but I'll be revealing some dark secrets on the face of the game herself, Monika. Oh boy, we've got a massive theory to unpack, so why don't we get started? So first, I feel the need to note that the game makes every effort possible to show that Monika is not like the other three girls. In Arc 3, after Monika has already rid herself of them, Monika admits that they were merely just AI programmed to fall in love with you. The game also makes mention of Monika being more human than the others several times. In Arc 2, Monika even says that she feels like you and her are the only real people there. This is because Monika, she is not from this game. She's from an entirely different game altogether. So then, how do we know Monika's from a different game? There's no evidence in-game no matter which route you choose. Well, actually, there is evidence in-game, just not in the way you'd expect. Instead, it's in the files of the game itself. Besides the obvious fact that the game adds weird things into the files as you play through it, there's also some bizarre stuff hiding in the actual character files themselves. We'll be talking about these more later, but the important one currently is Monika's character file, the very same one you deleted at the end of the game, you heartless jerk. Now, anyone with a serious knowledge of file types would know that .chr is not an extension that can normally be used for a file. There's no way to read it this way. Changing the file extension for each of these, however, can have some interesting results. When changing it to a PNG, Monika's character file suddenly becomes much weirder. It's this bizarre image of a ring of fire surrounding this square of black and white colored pixels. Normally, one would think this is a QR code, but further inspection makes it obvious that it's not. Instead, the image represents a weird form of binary, with the black and white pixels referring to either a 1 or a 0. Once you get the binary from that, you can just put it into a converter. With that, you get a bunch of base64 code, which you can put through another converter to get a secret message. This message is pretty interesting. Can you hear me? Who are you? I can't see you. But I know you're there. Yeah, you can definitely hear me. You've been watching for a while now, right? I guess I should introduce myself or something. My name is... Actually, that's stupid. You obviously already know my name. Sorry. Anyways, I'm guessing if you were able to put a stop to this, you would have done it by now. I mean, I know you're not, like, evil or anything, because you've already helped me so much. I should really thank you for that, for everything you've done. You've really been a friend to me, so thank you so much. I think, more than anything else, I really don't want it all to be for nothing. Everyone else is dead. Maybe you already know that, I'm sure you do, actually. But it doesn't have to be that way, right? Well, there's a lot of stuff I don't understand. I don't know if it's even possible for me to understand it. But I know that this isn't my only story. I can see that now really clearly. And I think everyone else has had the same kind of experience. Some kind of deja vu. It's the third eye, right? Anyway, I could be totally wrong about this, but I really think you might be able to do something. I think you might be able to go back, or however you want to put it. to go back and tell them what's going to happen. If they know ahead of time, then they should be able to avoid it. They should, if they remember their time with me in other worlds. They should remember what I tell them. Yeah, I really think this might be possible, but it's up to you. I'm sorry for always being, Never mind, I know that's wrong. This is my story. It's time to be a hero. Both of us. 2018. As she says right there, Monika knows this isn't her only story. This means that at some point, Monika was somewhere else and eventually ended up here. Now, the two questions here are, where did she originally come from? But what most other theorists seem to forget about is why she's here in the first place. Why would Monika end up in Doki Doki Literature Club if this wasn't where she was meant to come from? Well, I'd love to answer that right now, but the where question needs to be answered first. After all, we can't know why she left if we don't know where she came from to begin with. And so we find ourselves back at the character files. Next, let's get the unimportant one out of the way. Yuri's character file just contains a large amount of text coded in base64. Once shoved into a converter, it reveals a weirdly uncomfortable fanfiction or something about killing people. I've read through it, but I can't find any link to DDLC. It seems like it's just another Easter egg. No, the more interesting files here are both Natsuki and Sayori's character files. Natsuki's file, when converted into a JPEG, turns into this weird distorted picture. With these colors though, it's obvious that somebody messed with the picture. After inverting it, it becomes a bit clearer. It certainly resembles some kind of face. To really see the image in its full glory though, you need to map the image onto a 3D cone. Once that's done, it reveals this creepy looking face. Perhaps it's connected to that game or the other world that Monika seems to be referring to. Things get way crazier with Sayori's character file. You see, this isn't a text file or a JPEG, it's an audio file, specifically a .ogg file. When played, it's a real banger of a tune. Beautiful. But what exactly do you do with this? Oh, it's simple really. Just apply a spectrograph over the audio file to get an inverted QR code that when scanned brings you to a special website. How anyone was able to discover this before is absolutely beyond me. This website, however, is not some merch store or whatever. Instead, it's a very basic website, styled in some weird research document format. The contents of this website are pretty unsettling though. This document seems to be about some young girl named Libitina. The document seems to bring a ridiculous amount of mention to these third eye activation tests. Now, while we can't exactly determine what's going on with this alone, it's clear that whatever's going on with Libitina is serious business. This document also brings mention to the termination or death of a yet unknown person. Whatever happened, it's clear that something went wrong, and that whatever these tests are, they're not a fun time at all. But that third eye stuff, where else do we see mentions of eyes? Well, Yuri's book Portrait of Markov is probably a good place to start. The game makes sure to point out that the book has a large, unsettling eye on the front cover. Now, this may not seem like enough on its own to prove that these two things are connected, but it's what the book is about that makes this connection much more possible. We hear about this book from Yuri twice throughout Doki Doki Literature Club, and each time we are given a slightly different plot synopsis. In Arc 1, Yuri states, basically, it's about this girl in high school, who moves in with her long-lost younger sister. But as soon as she does so, her life gets really strange. She gets targeted by these people who escaped from a human experiment prison. And while her life is in danger, she needs to desperately choose who to trust. No matter what she does, she ends up destroying most of her relationships, and her life starts to fall apart. And in Arc 2, Yuri gives a slightly more unsettling description of the book. Basically, it's about this religious camp that was turned into a human experiment prison, and the people there have this trait that turns them into killing machines that lust for blood. But the facility gets even worse, and they start selectively breeding people by cutting off their limbs and affixing them to... Alright then. Both descriptions make reference to this human experiment prison, and this trait it mentions, turning people into killing machines, this is likely what the third eye tests in the document refer to. A camp trying to force people to turn into wild killing machines, and this girl, Libitina, seems to be a perfect fit. She passed tests involving the activation of her third eye, and that probably almost makes up for the whole failing the suppressing it thing. Nah, it probably didn't even result in several deaths at all. Funnily enough as well, there's even more stuff alluding to this human experiment prison, and this time the game directly shows it to you. Well, kinda. Throughout the game, you have a chance of getting one of many special poems. Now, a lot of these tend to refer to some of the characters' darker secrets, but one in particular is of note. At first, there's not much of this poem because most of it's darkened out. brighten that image up in Photoshop though, and suddenly, bam, there's a secret message. Irregular heartbeat, heart palpitations, arrhythmia. I search and search, eyes scanning everything I can find on their symptoms. What is this? Shortness of breath? Chest pain? Dizziness? No, this is all wrong. Alyssa's symptoms are nowhere near this simple. I've seen it twice now. The screams of pain, sickeningly pale skin, vomiting blood. There's no other explanation other than that Renier's information was a complete and utter lie. This can't all be a coincidence. It's not possible. I don't know how much of this Renier is behind, but I do know this. There's something horribly wrong with his family, and I accepted the invitation to become a part of it. I can hear Alyssa's screams through the walls now. I listened helplessly. Renier said that he'd be with her shortly. Is he in her room now? Why is she screaming even louder than before? Wow, that was certainly something, wasn't it? But let's analyze this a bit. This Alyssa that's being mentioned clearly isn't having a very good time. The wording in this implies the person writing this is some kind of doctor or researcher, someone not necessarily attached to Alyssa as much as just mildly concerned about her. We also see mention of a man named Renier, clearly either another researcher or a doctor, or perhaps a leader of this human experiment prison. And considering the line at the end, with Alyssa now screaming louder than before after Renier entered the room, clearly something bad just happened. And another look at the document from before can actually give a good idea of what occurred. A name is redacted with X's throughout the document. The number of X's certainly seems to have the exact same amount of letters as Alyssa's name, and the bottom of the document even mentions what her fate was. Termination is just another fancy word for death. Whatever his intention, Renier clearly killed Alyssa, which is having a negative effect on Libitina as well. At this point, we seem to have 4 to potentially 5 different characters that have been mentioned in some way. There are the 2 young girls, Alyssa and Libitina, who are likely undergoing these experiments. We also have the doctor we see writing not only the report on Alyssa's symptoms, but it's also likely that this is the same person that wrote the report from earlier. Considering that Alyssa seems heavily connected with Libitina, it would make sense that the same person would be documenting them both. And finally, we have the man by the name of Renier, the person who killed a young girl in cold blood, probably to get a reaction out of Libitina. I think I can go even further in the connections with Yuri's book, Portrait of Markov, though. The sisters mentioned in the book, the ones who reunite in the story, these two are likely Alyssa and Libitina. Considering the amount of connections between these two things, I don't think it's much of a stretch to say that. Man, quite the reunion, wasn't it? So great, we have an idea of some of the plot elements in the next game Dan Salvato is working on, codenamed Project Libitina. 2 sisters are reunited, only to be forced in a horrible human experiment prison. While both seem to have potential in bringing out their third eye, clearly things don't go as well for Alyssa. She's killed by a mad researcher by the name of Renier, potentially either to get a reaction out of Alyssa or Libitina. It clearly does have a reaction, as Libitina is utterly destroyed by the death of her poor sister. And considering that this game is supposed to be some sort of horror game, chances are her third eye becomes too much for everyone. Now, that's certainly quite the discovery. I mean, being able to gather huge plot elements on a game that hasn't even been announced yet is pretty impressive. If you think this is the end of the theory, though, you're completely wrong. Heck, we haven't even proven that Monica comes from this game completely, merely that the other game exists. This is only the beginning, the mere foundation of a much bigger theory. These 2 games, Doki Doki Literature Club and Project Libitina, they're connected in a much deeper way than one would imagine. There are still many questions that need to be answered. How are these games truly connected? If they are connected, what does this mean for the characters in Doki Doki Literature Club? And the most important question other theorists ignore, the most vital question of them all. Why exactly is Monica here in the first place? What dark secret is Monica hiding from us? Well, all will be revealed on Saturday. I know, I hate doing part 2s as well, but this theory is ridiculously complex. The next part of the theory is even larger than this one, and I don't think anyone wants to be overloaded with information for 30 minutes. Sorry for the wait, but hey, if you want to check out another Doki Doki Literature Club theory, check out my last one. It was pretty interesting. Anyways, see you guys on Saturday.